Hello YouTube, and welcome to a new episode of the Fake Merc character study. If you clicked on this without knowing who the person on the thumbnail is, his name is Jason Bloblo, and he's one of the worst person to ever post his face on the internet. I've made many episodes about how much of a fucking idiot and failure he is, which are hilarious roasts, and you can access them all in the description. But for the vast majority of you, I think you already know who Jason is, so you are in for a treat because, as you might or might not know, Jason, recently called me out for being a Nazi, a racist, and a white supremacist. All of this, of course, without any proof. The issue for him is that, sadly, proof exists about him being all of these things, because once again, he accuses other people of what he does. So, as I promised a long time ago, it was almost a prophecy of sorts, I'm going to make a video detailing all of the racist things that Jason Bloblo has ever said and done on the internet. And it's going to be quite long. There's a lot of things to get into, to the point that I'm not going to even mention the fact that he called for the death of Muslims in the US, that he called for the death of Latinos in the US. All of that I covered in the previous episode, you can also find in the description. Now, today I'm going to focus on brand new stuff that you've never heard before. And that leaves us with a ton of horrible statements he made about Asians, about black people, and about Native Americans, which are all compiled in a single document that I've recently uncovered, a white supremacist pamphlet that Jason Bloblo wrote many years ago, which contains some of the most racist statements I've ever read in my life. So if you thought Bloblo was a bad person before, you are in for a big shock, to the point that I actually recommend you skip this video if you are sensitive, because I'm going to try and make it funny. I'm going to include some roasts, but the document in itself is highly disturbing, so be warned. But before we do that, before we get into all of the racist things he has said in the past, I need to start with something else. And that something is to defend the honor of a man that I deeply respect, namely Alan Throw. You see, Bloblo, being the piece of shit that he is incapable of attacking me directly because he has no ammunition. So what he does is, he attacks the people who I'm friends with, who I work with. So what he did recently is that, being the vile creature that he is, he questioned Alan's honor as a Marine, because yes, Alan served in the Marines, he was a military member. Because apparently, since I'm a bad person and a Nazi, it makes Alan a Nazi because he associates with me. And since we all know that Alan has better things to do than to deal with the horrible person and the gremlin that Bloblo is, I'm going to have to do the honors. So what we're going to do is very simple. I'm going to list the life accomplishments of both of these individuals, and we're going to see who the best person is. Because in his video, again, Jason states that Alan is a piece of shit. He tells him to go fuck himself. He says, fuck you, Alan, because apparently he's such a bad person. Okay, let's see who the bad person is. Keep in mind that every time we've played this game of comparison, Bloblo lost. He's 0 to 10. He loses to everyone. He even lost to fucking Genova. Jason Genova has a better life than Jason Bloblo. But let's see, maybe this time it will be different. Maybe it will start a legacy of winning in the Bloblo household. So, let's begin with Bloblo. All of this is, of course, objective. It's just an objective retelling of their lives. Jason Bloblo, was born in an upper-class family, and yet he somehow barely managed to get his high school diploma. He flunked out of community college. He then got arrested for illegal possession of firearms, at which point he was described by the judge as having the intelligence of a toddler. He then got hired by his father's company as a grunt, meaning that he was moving shit from point A to point B, and that also points to him being a Nepo baby. He couldn't even get that level of job, that entry-level job, without the help of his dad, and yet he still managed to fuck that up because he got fired from that job. How do you get fired from a company that your dad owns? How is that even possible? I don't know, but he managed. He then spent his days just shitposting on bodybuilding forums and taking drugs, and where he would discuss enlightening topics such as how much he loves to put dildos up his ass, Again, it's not a claim, we have screenshots, he actually said this. He also used to LARP as a reptilian overlord. Apparently he came from a family of people who were like into satanic rituals. Apparently he thinks it makes him look cool, which at some point allowed him to meet a woman online who decided that she wanted to get married with him, which shows that there is hope for everyone. If this guy managed to get a lady on that type of forum, you can get laid as well. He then left the US because a woman wanted his ass, so of course he took that chance and he moved to the UK, where he immediately started to rely on his wife by playing World of Warcraft all day, every day, leaving her to make all of the money because he made no money whatsoever, and also to take care of the house. So she was a nurse, she would come home and then do the dishes and cook because he would just stay in bed all day, play World of Warcraft, get fat and be lazy. And he got away with this by claiming to be handicapped. So he lied about having a handicap for many years, and he still does to this day. He then started a YouTube channel where he claimed to be an ex-mercenary member who worked for the Clinton government and executed people down in South America, which of course was untrue, and this has a name. It's called stolen valor, which of course he got in trouble for. People called him out for it. Veterans were extremely mad, and then when he got called out for that, he threatened to kill veterans. He also started to lie about other people in the fitness industry, which eventually got him sued by Lane Norton, at which point he fled the UK like a coward because he didn't want to go to jail or to go to prison. And thankfully for him, because he had no money to his name, the UK government couldn't seize anything because you cannot touch welfare checks. After this, once he was back in the US, he continued making shitty ass videos that no one gave a fuck about. He started a relationship with a meth addict who also happened to be an ex-stripper, so quite the winner of a woman who refused to have a kid with him because she didn't want to have his genetics. Thank fucking God for that. And eventually even that low-grade woman left his ass. He now shares a flat with a roommate at the ripe age of 45, doesn't even own a fucking car and has not a penny to his name. He's childless, he's unmarried, his entire family hates his fucking guts. He was disowned by everyone, and he is a laughingstock for the entire fitness community. He's been lifting for the past 20 years, but looks like your average fat guy, has a pathetic 1,300 total. Again, for 20 years of powerlifting, that's really fucking bad. Teenagers get these numbers at 18, 19 after 2 years of lifting. Being in mind also that he is on drugs to accomplish all of this. These are numbers on fucking drugs and fat. That's mind-blowing. It's almost an accomplishment in itself. And he also hasn't made any progress in 10 years. If you don't believe me, go check out his total from 10 years ago, 2014. It was the same, 1,300. So a pretty dire, pretty grim picture of a man. Let's compare that with Alan Throw. Alan Throw was born in a working class family. He got into community college, but decided to enlist in the Marines Corps. He got selected for presidential support duty, which requires a top-class PFT score. It's the score that judges how athletic you are, how far you can run, how long you can hold a plank, how many pull-ups you can do, etc. You also need an above-average ASVAB and GT scores, which are the scores that test your ability to do math, to understand language, etc., as well as pass a security clearance, meaning that if you have a criminal record, you're out. You cannot do that job. So if we look at those three things, PFT score, being able to run, Broho would fail. He cannot run to save his life. Being able to do math, being able to understand text. Broho barely speaks English. That's his one language and he sucks at it. And then security clearance, Broho was arrested for illegal possession of firearm, which explains why, unlike Alan, who actually was a soldier, who actually was on duty, Blow himself LARPed as a soldier and lied and committed stolen valor because it's much easier than actually putting in the work and serving your country honorably. Then, after a successful boot camp, Alan was sent to Washington, D.C. on security duty, at which point he met President Obama. Very impressive. President Obama, who, might I remind you, was called by Bloho a Muslim and a terrorist because he happens to be black. Things to remember. After this, Alan joined the Marine Corps Body Bears, a small group of Marines who have the honor of performing funerals and carrying the caskets of fallen Marines, and that is quite horrible indeed. Meanwhile, Bloho was threatening to kill veterans who called him out on his stolen valor. You see the difference between the two? Then after serving his country, Alan opened his own gym, starting from scratch, with no help whatsoever, and with no money, so he's not a Nepo baby, unlike Bloho. He also opened a YouTube channel, and over time, with hard work, he managed to make both a success, because now he has a YouTube channel that has close to 1 million subscribers. He owns Untamed Strength, which is one of the biggest gyms in Sacramento, and he is widely beloved by everyone because he is kind, he is very supportive, he has a helpful attitude towards everyone, so of course, naturally, everyone in the fitness community adores him. He also has a 350 bench, or at least had in the past a 350 bench, a 5-plate squats, and a 600 pounds deadlift. All of that while staying perfectly natural, without any drugs, and without looking like a grotesque pig. He actually looked good doing it. He also won several strongman competitions, he got really good at running, and he has recently transitioned to bodybuilding, and he boasts an excellent physique. He has a six-pack, he has round shoulders, he has veins everywhere, so he did well in every single physical endeavor he ever partook in. He is also the father of 2 beautiful children and has a wonderful wife with which he lives in a big house that he owns. His parents and his friends are all very proud of him. So if you compare the two, I think it's clear to see who the roach is, who the bad person is. So at the end of the day, no, Bloho, fuck you. The fact that you even dare call out Alan, even murder his fucking name, is the sign of your delusion and lack of self-awareness. You're worth less than the dirt under Alan's shoes, that is for sure. And if we lived in a just and honest society, for this transgression, for this crime of even daring to insult someone who is so superior to you, you would be thrown in a cage and fed nothing but dog food for a fucking month, just to teach you a lesson. But sadly, we live in a society where people like you get to exist. And keep in mind one thing. Not only is Alan 1,000,000 times the man that you'll never be, but if you were to die tomorrow, tens of thousands of people would be devastated. The entire fitness community would grieve. I would grieve, because we would lose a brother. If you died tomorrow, we would celebrate. Your father, your own father, would pop the champagne. He would party, rightfully so, because it would be one less roach on the surface of the earth. We would meme your death for about a week, and then everyone would forget about it. This is the reality of your situation. And the fact that he was even confident enough to insult a veteran after all is done already, all of the stolen valor and the death threats to veteran, is already bad. But if you think that this is the worst thing you'll hear today in this video, you're in for a shock, because this is absolutely nothing compared to the amount of racist nonsense he's been spreading on YouTube and on the internet, because it predates his YouTube channel. So this is what we're going to do today. As I told you in the intro, I recently uncovered a text that Bloho wrote before his YouTube days, in which he explains his belief towards what he calls inferior races, and the name of this pamphlet is A Beast with a Hand. If you are a hardcore, if you're a veteran of Blahotism, you've seen that article and you've heard that name. But I don't think many people actually read the document. I remember reading it back in 2015, and I knew back then, even with my very poor English abilities, that it was bad. But rereading it today, holy fuck, it makes neo-Nazi ideology look like cheerleader school. It makes it look like fucking nothing. It is insane. So we are going to focus on it today, because apparently I'm a racist white supremacist. So let's see what that document actually contains. Because wouldn't it be super ironic if the guy who went on a very recent self-righteous tirade about how he was apparently going to end racism in the fitness community, wouldn't that be ironic if we found out that this person was actually a neo-Nazi and a white supremacist? And I know what you're thinking, that I shouldn't have to defend myself because the accusations against me are baseless. And I agree, but it gives me an excuse to fire back at him. Because naturally, if you take one look at my face, you'll get the sense that my ancestors weren't named John or Hans. Look at this, right? As we say in French, il y a du couscous dans la salade. But again, we now in the US have people who are like 100% Latino Hispanics who get accused of being white supremacists. So wouldn't you know, maybe I'm one as well. Like, it's not possible to say just because I don't quote unquote look like one. So let's instead look at the reasons that Bloho gave to explain why I'm apparently a Nazi. So Bloho's logic is that since I put Hitler in my recent thumbnail, because I made a video about fascism in the fitness community, then this must mean that I myself am a Nazi. Okay, interesting. So according to his logic, anyone who ever uses Nazi imagery is automatically a Nazi. It makes you a Nazi, great. Well, this means also that, for example, one Edward Bay Westerman, who is a teacher at Texas A&M that specializes on Jewish culture and the Third Reich, and also wrote a book called Drunk on Genocide, is a Nazi. Because on that book, he put a picture of someone doing a Sieg Heil, and that person looks like Hitler to me. So that's devastating because we're going to have to break the news to Dr. Westerman that he's a Nazi. That all along he thought he was just a Jew talking about the things that happened to his people, but deep down, he was actually the child of the beast. He was working towards the extermination of his own people. I don't know who wants to actually volunteer to go reach out to Dr. Westerman. I'm certain that it's going to be very hard for him to listen to all of this, but hey, if Jason Bloho says it, then it must be right. I mean, he has a history of being right, so I think we should trust him 100% on this. But all jokes aside, I think you understand the reason why Jason did this. It was very clear and transparent to anyone, maybe not to him because he thinks he's a genius, but by calling me out for the thumbnail, and by what's in the thumbnail and not the content of the video, he can take it out of context, which allows him to paint me as a Nazi, because following his logic again, it's all it really takes. And I think he was hoping that people would be dumb enough to fall for this, but there's a few issues with that plan, the first one being that no one is that stupid. Like, I mean, literally no one in the fitness community is dumb enough to think that I'm a white supremacist just because I put Hitler in a thumbnail. Right? People have brains. They're able to understand the environment around them. And the only way for anyone to take these accusations at face value would be for them to trust Bloho blindly, but no one trusts him because he's a pathological liar. And also, there's something else that makes me laugh with his attempt at painting me as a Nazi. And that is that if my video was actually promoting Nazi ideology, do you really think YouTube would allow it on its platform? I mean, the video went semi-viral. It was recommended to a lot of people. You really think a billion-dollar company like YouTube, which is highly politically correct, would allow a video like this to stay up even for a few hours? It would be deleted immediately. And worse than that, more grievous, you really think that no one would call me out? Within this community, I mean, even people I associate with and that I like would call me out. I mean, Alan Thor served in the army. He would call me out if I ever said something like this. But then you have to also look at the people who don't like me. Look at the amount of people who have beef with me. These people dream to take me down. They would jump on the chance of calling me a Nazi. If they could use that to cancel me, they'll do it. But they took one look at your evidence, if they even paid attention to what you said, and they were like, okay, so it's nothing again? But beyond this blatant attempt at manipulating public opinion, which requires a brain, so of course it was going to fail, what bothers me is also the fact that this is just an attempt at censoring me. And remember that this comes from a guy who used to paint himself as like a Second and First Amendment defender, a Texan badass. That didn't last long, right? Apparently as a Frenchman, I better represent the values of this flag than you do, motherfucker. But on top of that, and then you understand that I'm starting to ease you back into what's mattering today, there's also the hypocrisy of Bloho calling anyone a white supremacist when he himself is one. And as I said, unlike him, I have proof. So let's get into the proof and the meat and potatoes of this video, the racist pamphlet, a beast with a hand. Now understand that I will not be able to show you screenshots of the text, because YouTube could take the video down by saying that I'm promoting hate speech. So instead, I'm simply going to be quoting the worst passages. But what I'll do is I will put a link in 2 parts in the pinned comments. And you, if you want to access the text, again, remember it's highly disturbing, you can put these 2 pieces together, which will give you an HTML link, and that will give you access to the text. Keep in mind also that this is only one of the many pamphlets that Bloho wrote for the KKK back in the days. Yes, you heard it right. Jason Bloho used to write for the official website of the KKK, and he was actually stupid enough to not only sign these texts using his real name, but also claiming them, meaning that we have messages of him afterwards, retroactively, who confirmed that it was indeed him. This is not someone else who has the same name. No, this is 100% the person that we all know. And as for the text itself, it is basically a rewriting of the scriptures in order to justify white supremacist views, which I'm certain is going to greatly rejoice the many Christians that watch this channel. How great is it that Bloho took your Bible, took your doctrine, to twist it into his own stupid, racist, and backwards worldview. And backwards it is because, essentially in the text, what Bloho does is he attempts to explain to us that the only real descendants of Adam are Caucasians, and that everyone else on Earth isn't actually human, but instead beasts that never received the intelligence that white people were bestowed with. Here is a quote from the text that illustrates this. Can a white woman give birth to an African or Asian baby? Not unless she has been fornicating with a Negroid or Asian. This is the start, people, okay? If this shocks you, hold on to your breeches because it's going to get much worse. He continues, who unto the pastors who teach that we all come from Adam? Man and beast neither come from the same source, nor are they equal in the eyes of Yahweh. This may be so, but the word tells us that we're all equal. Oh, use the common sense that Yahweh gave you, brothers and sisters. Let us observe the races, which we are to believe to be our equals. Take a long, hard look at the Negroids in Africa. Without the help of the white man in South Africa and a few other countries, they have built absolutely nothing. They have built no great cities on their own. Isn't that interesting? Wow, these are the real feelings that Bloho has in his heart. That really puts into perspective this new social justice warrior phase he's going through nowadays. Okay, well, first and foremost, blatantly racist. 2, not even true. This is not even factually correct. What about Timbuktu? What about Guinea? What about Gao? What do you make of these great cities that existed before the arrival of the white man? What about the empires of Songhai? What about the kingdoms of Congo and Mali? What about the trans-Saharan gold trade that made these people immensely rich? The king of Mali was said to be one of the richest men in history. But of course, you would need to actually study these cultures to understand that, or to even know that. It's much easier to think that there was nothing going on until the white man arrived. That is what Bloho believed because he's a fucking idiot. But understand that he is basing the entirety of his racist ideology on that very idiocy. He continues, name one technological invention that has come out of these beasts in Africa. Prior to the coming of the white man, their most complex tools were stone spears and bits of rocks. They have had over 30,000 years more time than us to develop their technology and civilizations. The Africans cannot even feed themselves. Without aid from the United States, England, France, Germany, and other Caucasian nations, while over half of the Negroids in Africa would starve to death. So let's start with the terms I'm using here, because anyone who uses the term Negroid is a racist. I don't care if it's scientifically accurate, you're a racist. Because that term is only used by people who try to make a distinction between white men and black men by claiming that one is actually human and superior, and the other one is nothing but a beast. As for the rest, the fact that he times and times again likens black people to beasts is despicable, of course, but understand the hypocrisy of it, right? Because If someone writes this, with this level of hatred and vitriol towards black people, you think they can change? Like, let's be honest. Do you think it's possible to change from this? I don't buy it. So to see Bloho nowadays, who is LARPing as a social justice warrior, who is going to stand up against racism in the fitness community, you wrote this. Where is the apology for this? The text is still out there. You cannot lecture anyone else, regardless of the reason, until you address this. Because this is hatred. And it wasn't that long ago. And that's not the only thing. Because this is a text that was for the KKK, but even on his YouTube channel and on forums, Bloho has also a long history of disparaging black people online. So for example, Bloho has a long documented history, of using the N-word both on forums and on Facebook. For people who remember, back when he used to have beef with vegan gains, he would openly call vegan gains the N-word on Facebook. That doesn't sound very tolerant to me, it doesn't sound very anti-racist to me. And of course, he often did this behind stock accounts, but because for some reason he was stupid enough to reveal the full list of them, of all of his split identities, we know it was him, because he told us it was him. So, we know now that all of these posts that contain all of this racism was indeed typed by his own sausage fingers. And I want to inject a side note here because I'm certain that some of you might say, oh, this is trolling. That's not trolling. When you write an article for the KKK, you're not trolling, okay? This is way beyond trolling. And two, you have to keep in mind that all of this happened when Bloho was in his 30s. We're not talking about a teenager who said the N-word once to be edgy. This is a pattern of behavior that he carried onto adulthood and that still exists today. He has not changed. Now, he's only getting better at hiding his racism, but I don't buy for a fucking second that he doesn't feel the same way inside. And again, to demonstrate my points, let's look at these forum posts that come in two different shapes, I guess. The first where he just insults black people, and the second where he LARPs as a black man. And these ones are very interesting as well, you'll see. So the first example I have is an account called Tiger88. And 88 naturally stands for SS. This is the same guy that called me a Nazi, but used Nazi imagery and symbolism in his fucking nicknames on the internet. And on this account, he naturally uses the N-word as much as he can. And he also adds at some point, gratuitously, a lot of fucking Asians here. Zipperheads, which I suppose is a slur. I wasn't even aware that this slur existed. But you'll see that Bloho doesn't just hate black people. He hates everyone. Everyone who is not white, he openly hates. But we'll get to the Asian hate later. With that very same account, Tiger88, he also posted, Long Beach sucks a fat one. Naggers everywhere. You understand that by naggers, I mean the N-word. I'm not going to pronounce it. I'm censoring myself because I don't want to say that word, but yes, he openly used it. And he used it a lot because I also have two more posts from the same account where he comments on local news and he says, more dumb naggers at it again. And also, and people wonder why blacks are stereotyped dumb ass naggers. Now, some of you might tell me that this could be because you had bad experiences with black people. That would already not excuse this level of hatred and racism. But also, we know for a fact it wasn't true. He lived in a very privileged part of Texas, surrounded by white people. But where it gets really funny is the fact that the reason why Bloho hates black people, which again, he knows nothing about, he doesn't know any black person, is because apparently they're all criminals, poor and dumb. But doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that ring a bell? Criminal, poor, dumb, no house, no car, no wife, no teeth. Anyone? Does that remind you of someone? It's him. He hates people that he doesn't even fucking know, and he injects stereotypes into a situation, but he's talking about himself. It's the typical thing he always does where he accuses other people of being him, of doing what he does, and then he hates on them. What does that mean? What does it say about him? Well, that he hates himself, naturally, because that's exactly that. The guy flunked out of community college. He's living on welfare. The guy collects welfare checks every single month, and he lives in Section 8 housing, and has a criminal record, and he lives with a criminal roommate. A criminal roommate who, by the way, he is absolutely terrified of. there is this hilarious live stream snippet from like a month ago where he's talking very like softly in the mic, and you can hear the roommate come home, and you can see the panic on his face, and he's like, okay, I have to cut the stream. Because I don't think that she allows him to stream when she's home because it annoys her. So the tough guy, the alpha male, is being ordered around by a female. But I mean, she killed a man, so he must be terrified of her, of course. But let's get back to the topic at hand, because as I said, for Bro to make fun of black people, the black people in his head, for being ghetto or uneducated is beyond hypocritical. Because he has no fucking leg to stand on. He's all of these things. This is a level of delusion that far exceeds mental illness. And if you think that this was limited to the forum post, not at all. It was also present on his YouTube channel, although it was, of course, much less violent, but the racism was still present. So if you remember, there was this classic Menti episode where he and Moon Cookie were reacting to a video by Live to Look Good Naked, I think, where the guy went around and showed pictures of shirtless fitness influencers to women, and the women said which ones they liked. And of course, no one liked Bloho's body because he looks like a melted candle, he looks disgusting. And black women were especially disgusted by his appearance, and that made him extremely mad. So what he did is, he criticized them for apparently being too ghetto to find him attractive. So essentially, if I were to translate from racist speech, what he meant was that black women are too stupid to find an intellectual such as him attractive. Of course, they're only attracted to thugs. The thing is that you're not an intellectual. You're a fucking moron. You have a high school diploma. You're a dummy. So for you to call anyone else dumb, and also the woman that was with him at the time was Moon Cookie, a meth head. She was like an hairdresser, I think. She was a fucking moron as well. The two went very well together. But in his head, for some reason, because he's white, he's sophisticated, and he floats above the people that he calls inner city. You live in the inner city. You live in Section 8, right? It would be one thing to be racist because you're some like big shot white guy who has a ton of money and like a massive mansion, and you look down on minorities. You're an asshole for this, but you do what you do. Right? It's your prerogative. You think what you think. But here, he doesn't even have that. He's looking at people as below him when these people far exceed his value as a human. But let's get back to the KKK writings. He continues by saying, what of blacks in modern day America? As we all know, they originally came over on slave ships. Do slavers just grab any N-word they saw and ship them to America? Of course not. History tells us that the slavers elected only the strongest and healthiest of the tribesmen they found. These were the top 10%, the finest men and women that Africa had to offer. Once they got them on the slave ship, the living conditions were so horrible that only half of them survived the voyage across the Atlantic. Care to guess which half? The strongest half. Only the elite of the elite made it to the shores of its continent. Once the slaves made it to this land, they were selectively bred for strength, endurance, and intelligence. Our ancestors bred an elite race of Negroids who should then at the very least be our equals. First and foremost, the fact that he can talk so callously about slavery, which is one of the greatest tragedy of human history, shows the content of his character. He doesn't seem to feel bad about these people who are stolen away from their land, who died en masse on the boats, who are treated like animals and beasts, because he believes them to be animals and beasts. So for him, it's perfectly normal. But then you have the genetic discussion here, where he essentially claims that the fact that black people in America were not able to do as well as white people is the proof of their inherent inferiority. Are we just going to ignore the fact that these people are slaves for 400 years? Your people came in with money from Europe and you still managed to be a fucking nobody. There are people, black people, whose ancestors were slaves who are doing better than you. So what does it say about you, Bloho? Well, it says you're a fucking loser and you're a fuck up. But beyond that, anyone who knows anything about slavery also knows that this is completely uneducated, because this is not true. All that he said here is completely false. The people who were selected for slavery were sold into slavery, a lot of the time by the tribal leaders that ruled Africa, that collaborated with the colonizer. They sold people from tribes and cities and villages that they conquered. These were not the top 10%. These were not the elites of Africa. It's completely backwards to think that there would be nobility. But again, it shows that he truly thinks that when white people arrived to Africa, it was like no hierarchy, no kingdom, no nothing. Those people walking around eating dirt. But you know, he's not the only one who thinks like this. Many racists think like this, which only really goes to show their own stupidity. But the thing that pisses me off the most is all of this our equal, we did this, we did that. You did nothing. You did nothing. And your ancestors might have done these things, whether you like these things or not, but you as a person, the glory of European empires, it wasn't you, right? You are the turd that came afterwards. You are the residue of that quote-unquote greatness. You are absolutely nothing. So let us compare, to prove that I'm absolutely right, let us compare Bloho's accomplishment, again, this superior white man from a superior race, let's compare him to these apparently inferior races. So, if I look, for example, at the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, it shows that the average yearly salary for an African American male in 2020 was $40,000. How much does Bloho make? Beyond welfare doesn't count, it's not income. How much does Bloho make? If he makes 20K a year, it's already the end of the wood. So you're getting out-earned by people who are inferior to you. Very interesting. Then we also see that 22% of African Americans have a college diploma that you don't fucking have. So all of these people are already better than you. And unlike you, many of them came from an underprivileged background. They didn't have parents who were willing to pay for their studies, they had to find their way through the system. You had everything given to you and you still barely managed to graduate high school. But unsurprising, because who else would write that type of article but a fucking idiot and someone who felt that life? He continues, "We have given these black beasts everything. The N-word blames us because they cannot achieve what we have done. You've achieved nothing. They blame it on racism and accuse Wiley of keeping them down. Bloho accuses everyone in his life of his fucking failures. He's incapable of taking responsibility. Again, he's talking about himself here. No amount of affirmative action will ever make us equal because it is Yahweh who created the inherent differences between man and beast." There you have it. Like, do I need more proof to show you that Blaha really thinks black people are animals? It's not a meme, it's not a joke. He believed that. And paradoxically, he also likes to pretend being black online, which only goes to reveal how little he knows about the people and the culture that he detests. Because every single time I've caught him doing that, LARPing as a black person, he's essentially doing the equivalent of a minstrel show. You know, the blackface, back in the days where white people used to grim themselves as black and act like monkeys? That's exactly what he does. And the point of these shows is the exact same point that he's trying to prove here when he does it, which is that black people are grotesque subhumans who only exist for the entertainment of white people. And this is when we get into the more laid-back part of that rant. I'm sorry if I'm getting heated. The accusations towards me I don't really care about, because if you're the type of person to believe that without proof, I don't really care about impressing or proving anything to you. But the fact that this person was allowed for years to make videos on the internet, to spread his hate and saw zero consequences, that pisses me off. But let's get into more tepid waters. Let's get into things that I've promised for a long time, because I've told you for a long time that I had these posts where Bloho pretends to be black and where he raps, or he creates raps. Well, there we are. This is when I'm finally going to reveal these posts to you. So for example, one of Jason's favorite games to play was to post in Ebonics to make fun of black people, because in his head, black people cannot speak proper English. Again, that's you. You make mistakes every single sentence. You speak one language and it's the easiest language to learn, and you still are so dumb you can't get it right. But here is one of the quotes from the many posts he's made in Ebonics. "This nagger know what be go on. Rest ya crackers be straight up foos frontin' and shit, motherfucker." So essentially, in Bloho's head, every single black person acts like a character from the Boondocks. Here's another one. "She-dog, I was rolling on the hard streets of Lennox, Watts, and Culver City, baby. I may be a cracker, but I ain't frontin' shit, yo. My armies and I was hanging slow and low, baby. Incomprehensible. I've literally never, in my 5-6 years in the US, heard a single black person talk like this. Not one. So again, all a fabrication in his head. I guess he watched too much MTV. He thinks that the life of a black man is like a rap clip. He thinks that this is reality. I don't know, but it's possible. Keep in mind, this is a white guy who never interacted with black people before and somehow still manages to hate them based on nothing. He also, at some point in one of his posts, claimed to play Bones with local thugs at lunch. What is this? Is this a movie? Is this Prison Break? Bones? Black people don't play Bones. Like maybe 30 years ago, I guess. They might play dice from what I heard, but again, that's a stereotype. Again, also local thugs. He claimed that he worked for a company that would hire thugs to clean up the streets. Who's gonna believe that? It's straight out of a fucking movie. You know for a fact that Bloho is the type of person that if you put him in a group of black people, especially black men, he's gonna melt. He's gonna turn into a pool of sweat. He would fucking panic. He'd be like, no. And the dudes, the brothers around like, what the fuck is wrong with him? But I would pay to see that, personally. Like an equivalent of Blacked, but with Bloho in the middle instead of a chick, that would be price. Just to see how inept he is at social interactions with the people that he claimed to despise so much. But again, in his fantasies, he was adopted by them and they called him Jasper, the nice phantom or whatever the fuck. Like he was white, but yo, I hang with the crew, yo, I'm part of the crew, yo. You're part of fucking nothing. White people, black people, Asians, we've all agreed on one fact, and that is that you're a piece of shit and that no one wants you. No one claims you. White people don't claim you either, bro. And all of that might sound very funny because I'm trying to twist it into a roast to alleviate the tension a bit, but keep in mind that these words have consequences. Bloho acted on this. Bloho held 2 black men at gunpoint at some point. That is serious. That could have led to death, which I wouldn't be surprised by because keep in mind also that this is a person who on Facebook, on his public Facebook, stated that every single black person who ever got shot by police deserved it. So the fact that he dared to cite Minister Farrakhan in his fucking KKK pamphlet says a lot about how fucking stupid he is. Because does he even know who Farrakhan is? Does he know that Farrakhan is black and a pillar of the black community? And this is just one of the many idiotic statements of that pamphlet. Again, I only selected the things that were the most racist, but it's a treasure trove of retardation. There's no other way to say it. Which is why if you are ready to swallow all of this disgusting smut, I recommend you read it because some of it is actually pretty funny. Like, for example, this gem where Bloho tells us that if one takes the time to do a minute amount of research, one can easily conclude that only the Caucasoid race or part Caucasoid mongrels have the ability to blush. So he constructed a narrative in his head where to be able to claim yourself as human, you have to be Caucasian. And the way to prove that you are Caucasian and therefore human is that you can blush. Well, if that's the case, Bloho, I have good news. Every single human can fucking blush. Black people can blush. You just don't see it because their skin tone is darker. He's so fucking dumb that he thought that this was a gotcha moment. Like, oh, black people don't blush. Guess we can just discriminate against them now because they're not human. Fucking imbecile. Or you also have this one. This one is mwah. For anyone who studied physics, you're gonna love this. If you had an entire planet covered with water and a great wind blew across it, certainly the water would move, but it would go somewhere else. And water from the other direction would quickly fill the void. This happens constantly in the oceans. Well, no, Bloho, this doesn't happen constantly in the oceans. He concludes this statement by saying that this is where we get waves. He was 30 back then. 30. He really thought that waves were created solely by the wind. He thought that if you go on top and the water and you go, you can create waves just like that. He doesn't seem to understand that there's such a thing as gravitational pulls that influence tides, which are a major reason why waves even occur in the first place, in which directions the wave go. Also the fact that waves are energy transfer, this is basic physics. So there is a perpetual motion at hand, it's a closed circle. Also the fact that there's something called subsurface ocean currents. There's something going on under the water, bro. It's not just the top or the wind blows. The wind is only one of these factors. This is basic shit. This is roughly like a third grade level of understanding of physics. And yet, he wasn't even able to grasp that simple of a fucking concept. In his 30s, this person gets to vote. He gets to own guns. You understand how grievous the situation is? And what I like the most about this entire pamphlet is the fact that he's trying to use a vocabulary that sounds smart, like my brothers, my sisters, this is simple if you only look at the facts. And then he goes on to say the stupidest shit. Like the juxtaposition of the two is priceless. But let's get back to the racism, because Jason doesn't just stop at black people. No. He hates everyone. So he, of course, also hates Asians and Native Americans. I quote, "These Mongoloid people had been there for thousands of years before us. What had they accomplished in those thousands of years? When we arrived, they were using tools of stone and bone. These primitive people worshipped pagan gods and failed to build civilizations beyond that of small tribal units." So essentially, this is Bloho excusing the genocide of the Native Americans because apparently they were inferior, so it was fine for white people to come in and ravage them and take their land. And let's not even get into the discussion of is it correct to think this way. What I really want to insist on is how little he researched these civilizations and cultures. Because one, South America had civilizations, they had massive empires, they had cities bigger than Europe, they had technological advancements that were not available in Europe, which I know is not taught in America, but if you did even a smidge of research, you would know. And then if we look at the natives had a complex religion, they had complex courts, they were not just pagan worshippers, they were also an oral culture, which explains why so much of it is lost nowadays. But I also want to insist on the fact that the war between the colonizer and the natives lasted for hundreds of years. If they were really so inferior, it wouldn't have been that long. America defeated the Nazis in what, 3 years? The natives held back. They used the technology that they took from the natives to fight, and they won many battles. The reason why they lost ultimately is because they were fighting against an entire fucking continent of people who were sending waves and waves of people. So eventually they cracked. And after that, you can side with them and say that they should be given back their land, which you can argue, or you can say, well, they played the game and they lost. Again, that's fine. That's not the question at hand. The question is, who the fuck is Bloho to give his fucking opinion on any of this when he understands nothing? But he continues, because it's not enough to hate natives, he also has to hate Asians as a whole. The other branch of the Mongoloid race, likewise, Mongoloid race, like Negroid race, don't use these words. I don't care if science is okay with it, say Asian and black, because if you use these terms, you're already announcing what you're going to say next. Like no one ever has said, oh yeah, those Mongoloids, they're great people. Never. I continue. The other branch of the Mongoloid race has fared much better in Asia, and so claim that they are superior to us. This is probably because our schools have been mongrelized, and our once Christian society has been mixed with false religions and antichrist Jewish teachings. Interesting. Look who's Nazi now, huh? This has certainly negatively affected our productivity as a people. But as Asia surpassed us, my friend, take a long hard look at Asia. Culturally, China has bred a society of slaves. This is what our competitive advantage is. They can produce cheap slave labor to mass-produce goods. They haven't really caught up with the white race, or have they? So, once again, the typical anti-Asian drivel that they're bugs, that they have no creativity, they're just slaves. Look, if you heard one racist talk about Asians, you've heard them all, they all repeat the same things. And times again, it's also people who are underachievers and fucking losers in the white culture and the white countries that they love so much, exactly like Bloho. Because essentially what we have here is a man who somehow managed the tour de force of ending up poor and uneducated despite coming from a very privileged background, who is hating on people who within one generation managed to go from working class to upper class. Because that's Asian immigrants in most countries. Dad comes in, mom comes in, they both are working class, they're part of the proletariat, they have no money whatsoever, they have no support system, they bust their fucking ass, and their daughters and their sons become doctors, they become lawyers. They explode. Their social dynamics, their ability to rise through the ranks is unmatched. And in a sense, Bloho's ability is also unmatched, but he did the opposite. He did a reverse Asian immigrant journey where he managed in one generation to go from upper class to completely impoverished and on welfare. That is impressive in its own right, although I would argue, Bloho, that Asian immigrants are immensely superior to you on every single metric. I would trade Bloho for an Asian immigrant in a heartbeat, because between the work ethic, the intelligence, and the family-orientated culture, all of which Bloho knows nothing about and lacks entirely, yeah, they place themselves far above a loser like you. Write a text about that instead of talking about, oh, the white race, the white race. If you're the white race, then I refuse to call myself white. Count me in as something else. If there are Asian people in the comments, please let me know. Can I join your camp? Because if I can't, I'm stuck with Bloho, and I don't want to be stuck with Bloho. Please answer as soon as possible. But let's sum it up, because again, all of that started with Jason Bloho accusing me of being a white supremacist. So let's sum everything we just discussed up. A man who called interracial marriages fornication with a beast, who repeatedly used the N-word to refer to black people, and who claimed that the numbers were overstated big time when talking about the Holocaust, that very man is calling me a Nazi. That would almost be funny if it wasn't so fucking delusional. And now here's a warning for the people who some reason still associate with Bloho. You are willingly collaborating with a white supremacist who wrote for the KKK. And the issue is that he's really fucking stupid, because he was dumb enough to sign these fucking texts with his name. And the thing is that it's not just his secret that he's bad at keeping. He is bad at keeping everyone's secret. So, for every one of you that associates with him, I have bad news. Because he couldn't keep his fat mouth shut, I now have a ton of information about you. So for example, I know that one of you got arrested in North America for sale and possession of a banned substance, namely steroids, and had to flee. But there's still a warrant out for your ass. So I'd be very careful if I were you. There's also another one of you losers who apparently got in trouble for soliciting minors for prostitution, which now explains why you like Bloho so much. You both like to molest kids. Likewise, there is a warrant out for your ass in Eastern Europe. And now I understand why you don't leave your house. It's because you know damn well that there are people looking for you. But you know, when I found out of this information, I wasn't surprised. Because the only type of people who would associate willingly with Bloho must be pieces of shit. Because birds of a feather flock together. But for these people, keep in mind one thing. I'm not going to reveal any of that information, it's not my place. But eventually, Bloho will get in the spotlight. He will get in trouble again. And when that happens, he will get you down with him. You are going to sink with that ship. If he's not the one that to share your secret, someone else that is not me, that is not nice like me, is going to find out, and these people are going to make you sing. So if I have one advice for you, it's this. Cut ties. Stop talking to the guy. Haven't you yet understand he's completely idiotic? Whatever you're attempting to pull by associating with him is gonna fail. It is guaranteed to fail. And as I said, when that happens, Bloho is going to sell you out. Because every single time he's ever been caught doing something wrong, he always had a lie ready to save his own ass. So for example, when his ties with the KKK were revealed, he started to claim to be Jewish, meaning that his defense mechanism for all of this hatred was to say, oh, but it's fine because I'm actually a Jew. In his brain, he thought this was like the perfect defense and people were just going to stop going after him because of that. And the worst thing too is that we knew it wasn't true because this idiot, again, is incapable of protecting his fucking identity, so we know his entire family. I know the name of both of his grandparents, of both his parents, of every single sibling, every single cousin. I know his ancestry line better than he fucking does. So when he claimed to be Jewish, well, it's very easy. We just looked at his mom. His mom was Christian. She was buried in a Christian cemetery. So no, she was not Jewish, and neither is Bloho. But you see that's that pattern of behavior he does all the time, where he thinks that by claiming to be the opposite of what he's accused of, he could get off scot-free. So he's being anti-Semitic, racist, and a white supremacist. Oh, it's fine. He's just going to claim to be Jewish. When he committed stolen valor, what did he say? Oh, I never claimed to be military. I claimed to be an ex-mercenary. You see how his brain works? He really thinks he's smart. He thinks he's managing to outsmart all of us. But the only thing that we see from the outside is someone who is delusional and pathetic. He also claimed that he couldn't be racist towards Native Americans because he was Native, and that he couldn't possibly have molested children because he was molested, which was the theme of last video, where I proved that this wasn't true, that Bloho lied about his uncle molesting him, all of that for sympathy. Bloho made up a lie about being touched as a kid to get sympathy from people, which in my opinion is the worst thing he's ever done, because that's disgusting. He made a joke, he made a mockery out of every single victim and every single survivor. He is a quintessential piece of shit. But if you listen to what I said previously, you also might have caught that I told you that he claimed to be Native. Yes, Bloho, Moonface Bloho, the whitest man in America, claimed to be Native. One look at him and you can tell that there's not a drop of Native blood in his veins. He has no facial features like high cheekbones that would identify him as Native. But even beyond that, let's say genetics don't exist and he somehow is Native but looks like just a big lump of cheese. Okay, the issue is that once again, that's a very easy lie to disprove, because in the US, the Bureau of Indian Affairs uses what is known as a blood quantum definition. So essentially, to be Native, to be considered Native, you must be at least 1/4 Native American, at least 1/4. And this is tested by DNA, so there's no way to avoid or to lie or to fabricate results. No, 1/4 or you're out. This means that at least one of Bloho's grandparents would have needed to be full-blood Native, or at least one of his parents be half Native, which we know isn't the case because we have the ancestry line and we have the name and identity of all of these people, and none of them were connected to tribes. None of them had tribal entities or identities. And you know why Bloho tried to lie? You know why he tried to peddle such a stupid fucking lie that is easily disproven? It's because he made fun of Native Americans. In his Speck and Pie video, which is one of the cringiest videos I've ever seen in my life, where he's invited to his girlfriend's family for Thanksgiving, and they're eating pie, and he thinks that this is the perfect moment to talk about the genocide of Native Americans, he makes a joke about their death, and as he makes the joke, you have the aunt of the girlfriend that's sitting on his left, and she's slowly sliding out of the frame because she doesn't want to be associated with him, which I perfectly understand. But it's crazy to see that instead of just deleting the video and apologizing to Native Americans, no, what he did is he re-uploaded the video, but this time with an introduction where he said, oh, it's fine that I said that because I'm Native. First off, even if you are Native, it wouldn't be fine. And two, you're not Native, right? You might have Blackfoot, but that's because you're a dirty pig. It's not because you have any tribal connections. Right? The only connection that we know is true is the fact that Blaha is of Slavic origin. So he might have ancestors that come from there. And I don't know if you knew that, but he also claimed to be Slav at some point, which is the one time in his entire life where he didn't lie, because technically that's correct. And to, I guess, embrace his Slavic origins, he wore an Adidas singlet for a full month where he only did squats and ollie lifts. I know that this is a part of Bloho history that many people missed, but for a full month, he really tried to be Slav. And that could have lasted a long time, but unfortunately for him, he broke his wall practicing the snatch. So because of course he's an unbalanced and uncoordinated mess, he did a snatch one day, the barbell went above his head behind him, it slammed into the wall, it made a hole in the wall of a place he didn't own because he was renting at the time, he still is renting and he will be renting forever, and so he had to stop. But overall, I think it is quite the blessing that his ancestors immigrated to America, because can you imagine Bloho trying to survive in an Eastern European country? I think he wouldn't last very long. I mean, these countries tend to have a deeply rooted hatred for weak men, for cowardly men. I think that before he knew it, he would have ended up someone's bitch, which would still be a more enviable situation than whatever he has going on now, because between being some like Russian mafia guy's bitch or being a criminal's bitch where you live in fear because your roommate killed a man and so you cowered every time she calls your name like a beaten dog, either way you're looking, none of these scenarios are pleasant at all. But as always with Bloho and with vulnerable narcissists, it's never their fault. It's always someone else that's responsible, and right now, it's me. Meaning that Bloho in his sick brain has decided that I am responsible for everything wrong in his life. But think about it, Bloho. You started receiving hate online in 2015 the second you opened your mouth. And back then I wasn't there. I was actually very busy, I think, getting my first college degree. How many do you have, Bloho, again? Oh, that's right, 0. And back then, thousands of people were working really hard to ruin your life, and I had nothing to do with it. And likewise, people will keep hating on you long after I stop making these videos. If anything, these videos are the last semblance of attention you'll never get, because your channel is dead, I'm sure you've noticed, and in reality, I'm just helping you get some of that attention and clout that you've always dreamed of having. Sure, it's through negative attention, but that's the best you can hope at this point. And do you know why, Jason? Do you know why negative attention is all you've ever received and what you'll forever receive? It's because you're human garbage. That's why. Stop trying to look for a reason outside of yourself. The reason is you. You have no redeeming qualities and people can tell. Hating you is just as natural as stepping on a roach that you find in your kitchen. It's a natural defense mechanism against something vile and disgusting. And now let's end this video on a lighter note. So recently an agent sent me a picture of Bloho at a meet that he recently attended, and I just want you to look at that picture. Just look at Jason, look at how small he is compared to everyone else in the frame. People thought I was joking when I said that Jason was 5'4", but look at him. Compare him to the child in the picture. The kid is much further away from the camera, and he looks about as tall as Jason, which means that, indeed, Jason is a midget. And it's something I didn't mention in the KKK pamphlet thing, but there's an entire portion where Jason talks about giants, where he apparently believes that there used to be giants. Well, I think it is easily explained by the fact that, yeah, when you're a midget, everyone else is a giant. So there are indeed giants, Jason. It's called normal adults. But it doesn't just stop at his height, because height is something you can't control. What I want you to look at is his arms. Look at how thin they look from the back. They look like actual spaghettis. They look like the arms of a teenage girl. These arms cannot be bigger than 13 inches. It's absolutely impossible. And keep in mind that this is a guy who has been taking steroids and lifting weights for 20 years, and he's 200 pounds. It's almost impressive that he would manage to have that small of arms with all of these factors combined, because he looks smaller than your average middle school wrestler. Like, I know kids who are 14, 15 who go to my gym, who lift for wrestling, they literally mug him into oblivion. They're much bigger than him. So not only is he a garbage human, but he's also a complete failure at the one thing he spent his entire life doing. And even more hilarious, the agent who sent me that picture also told me that Kof would approach random groups of people and try and insert himself into their conversations forcefully. So he would go from people to people and be like, do you want to be my friends? Do you want to be my friends? That is a man in his fucking 40s. He is so alone that the only way he has for human connection is that it's to forcibly insert himself in other people's lives without their consent. And unsurprisingly, from what the agent told me again, No one at the meet wanted to talk to him. People avoided him. And not because they knew who he was, not because they knew he was a racist and a piece of shit. No, they pushed him away out of instinct. They instinctively knew that this person was a bad person. And you know what, Bloho? This is the difference between you and Alan Throw. This is the difference between you and Alex. These two are good guys, and people can tell. People love them immensely because of their good characters, and also because of their hard work. But you are rejected by society and by humanity as a whole, and it's because you're vermin scum. You spent your life hating other people, hating other races, and people can tell, people can smell that despicable stink on you. And so the isolation and misery that you're experiencing right now, you deserve, because you did that to yourself. But hey, if you want to see if we can make your life even more miserable, I'm sure we can find a way. I'm down to play. For example, I could start by sending your racist pamphlets to a bunch of social activists in your area. What do you think? I'm sure they'd love to have a chat with you about all of your beautiful beliefs. Or how about I reveal the fact that you once again very recently committed stolen valor? Do you remember how fun it was when Lane made that fact public? When all of these people came after you for your lies? I think it is in order because you recently, for some reason, decided to insult a veteran again, unprovoked. So a little reminder of the punishment you got last time, I think is in order as well. But unlike you, I'm actually merciful and I have a good character. So once again, I'm going to extend the same offer I extend at the end of every one of these videos. If you keep my name and the name of every single Nobonari, that includes Alan, out of your stinking mouth, I'll leave you alone. I won't reveal more about what I know, and you'll get to just fester in peace making videos that no one watches. But if you once again name drop me, if you accuse me or anyone else of anything, then the hammer will come down again. And I make this offer knowing that you're way too stupid to take advantage of my kindness, so you'll certainly start running your fucking mouth again, which means that the ment addicts in the chat and the comments will be very happy because they'll get their fix very soon. But let's not get too greedy, that will be all for today. I hope you enjoyed it and I'm going to wish you a good night. Thank you for watching and I'll see you soon.